if we've done a great job, which we certainly try to do, the review at the end of the sale speaks volumes for the salesperson and the organization that we've done the right thing by the person and given them a great vehicle to take their children out to their sporting events or wherever it is that they need to go.
Welcome to Driven Loyalty, the podcast with proven strategies and expert insights tailored for automotive professionals looking to maximize retention, enhance customer experience, and drive sustainable growth. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Driven Loyalty, where I get to talk to, well, anybody and everybody I want to talk to about creating more loyal customers in our dealership. And boy, do I have a guest for you today. In fact, I'm super stoked. We got a chance to kind of connect and talk a little bit before we start recording today. And I know this is going to be a fun time. We started in the industry about the same time, so it's going to be really, really fun. But hey, we can't make cool content like this without our amazing sponsor. And here's a quick message from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Podium. So here's a question for you. What would it mean for your dealership if you had one more employee who worked 24/7, never took a break, and was focused solely on turning every lead into a yes, even the after-hour ones, into test drives, a sale, and ultimately more revenue? Well, let's meet Jerry, Podium's brand new AI BDC. Jerry is a lead conversation machine, ready to jump on every lead that comes in instantly. He can answer questions, keep those leads engaged, and even schedule test drives, all without any direct human supervision. And here's the best part. With a seamless handoff to your sales team, your customers will never even know they were interacting with an AI. If you're curious about how Podium's AI BDC can help you move more cars, check it out at podium.com/SWJ. That's for Strategy with Jason. That's podium.com/SWJ, or just hit the link in the show notes below. All right, guys, you ready? I have the one, the only, I've been told oh so famous, Jess McQuillan with me. Jess, what's going on? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Good. And for everybody out there, Jess is with the Central Maine Motor Auto Group. Been in the business for 25 years. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you, Jess.
Absolutely.
Hey, Jess, what I'd like to do to kick off these podcasts is I'd like to kick them off with a little origin story, right? I know we got to talk a little bit about this before we started recording, right? Because nobody just wakes up one day and goes, yeah, automotive, that sounds like fun. Let me go spend 25 years doing that. So Jess, let's start there if you're cool with that. I want to start with the little origin story of how you got started in this crazy world we call the automotive industry.
So I actually did fall into the car business by accident. I was working at a local newspaper, and my boss, she suddenly left that organization and she came to the dealership to work. But she had some young kids at the time, and she had an opportunity to go to work in the school that her children were attending. And I was still at the newspaper, so she called me up and she said, this dealership has just created what they call a BDC, and I think that you would be perfect for it. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to be that person. So I said, well, I'll come in for an interview. And so I came in for the interview and I met with the executive manager, and I explained to him that I had a degree in public accounting, so this really wasn't the area that I was intending to go in. But I went through the interview and I did get the job, and the internet really hadn't started at that point in time. So
it was really fresh. I remember I got in the
same we had, I think it was Netscape, the internet provider, and then we had at Auto Bytel, I
Yes,
believe,
I remember. Yeah.
for leads when they got faxed in. But I did. I started in the BDC making uh, follow up calls after the service appointment, and then it just kind of took off from there. And coincidentally, my accounting background actually did come into play because it was, it gave me a little bit of edge in terms of being able to make some spreadsheets, analyze some of the data that the dealership wasn't currently looking at
Sure.
with regard to salesperson performance, and customer satisfaction. So I just kind of jumped in, and they gave me the latitude to be able to kind of learn as I go and create as I go. And that's exactly what I've done over the 25 years since I've been here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you know what? It's funny because I had a similar path to you too. Like, when I first kind of got in the business and I started to move up, like they didn't necessarily have a role like for me yet, right? So at the time, they called me the director of internet operations and BDC, because they just didn't know what else to call it, And it's like and I think it's hilarious you brought up auto buy tell leads because I remember my friend, like that was one of my jobs. Like the first day on the job was like go through these faxes and like reply back to them, and then what I remember what was a big deal because I got hired on right at the time when my dealership was getting their dealer.com website, right? Like this, it was going to be this epic, like world changing event that we were now going to be officially online, which really was just a glorified brochure. But anyways, so I had a very similar trajectory, and like, so my background was marketing. I wanted to come up with like the next bum, like, and of course I got sucked into the car business, right? And similar to you, kind of like, okay, well, I started doing this, but they're like, hey, you know a lot about this marketing thing, and do you know this thing called Google? I know this thing you call Google. I personally like Ask Jeeves, but I know this thing, right? I'm dating myself, right, Jess? You remember Ask Jeeves, don't you? You remember Ask Jeeves. Um, so yeah, I had a very similar one. So this is going to be a lot of fun because both of us have been in that time frame where we've seen the industry kind of go through these changes. More importantly, not just the industry, the customer, right? Like, I mean, just think about like just when like me and you started, like, and just what the customers kind of like expectations now these days and just how that's kind of changed over the last 24 years. It's not enough that we just meet their expectation. The new expectations, we have to exceed the expectation. And that kind of segues perfectly into our topic today because, we want to talk about meeting customers where they are at in their journey. Not our journey. Let me just make that really clear. Not our journey, their journey, and how we can kind of meet in that. Just tell me a little bit, kind of like when you were thinking about doing the podcast, why did this topic kind of come up for you? I know this is a hot topic for you. You've definitely talked about this with other people. Why is it kind of a hot one for you, just out of curiosity?
For me right now, coming out of COVID and following the customers through their journey and seeing their expectations, what I was uncovering was the salespeople, when they were given an opportunity from the BDC to start the conversation with the customer, what I was seeing them do in their follow up was starting over. So
Mm-hmm.
rather than taking the customer from the point that the BDC had them at, they went back to the beginning, started asking all of the questions that we've already dealt with, and that just made the customer have to spend more time. And as we all know, that time is currency, and having to have them repeat that information just does not make for an efficient process for the customer or for the salesperson. And allowing them to have that time was really important, and it does reflect in the satisfaction scores.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking at the points in time where the salespeople were starting over, and so I would just coach to, let's meet them where they're at in their journey. The customer said this. And I want you to lead in with the answer to that question. Don't go back to the beginning and saying, what are you interested in? Does this color work? Does this equipment level work? If they've specifically stated that I want a vehicle that's good for
Hmm.
7 passengers and we have that car and we've teed you up, uh, then you need to start over and talk about how that 7 passenger vehicle is going to fit their needs, and go from there, rather than talking about all the vehicles, 350 cars we have on our lot. That's not where we need to start. We need to start where the customer is. And we got to remember that these customers nowadays, they have access to the same information that we have access to, and they're very educated. And we want to treat them like they're educated. Some people still need guidance, and we are there to be the people that provide the guidance. But I don't feel at this stage in the game that we need to be telling customers what to do. We just need to share all the information that we have and provide the right fit for the customer.
Well, it really is kind of a process, right, Jess? I mean, like, what you kind of articulated there is a really good idea. In fact, actually, Jess, I don't think anybody out there watching and listening to the show right now is necessarily going to disagree with us. Like, hey, meet the customer where they're at in the journey. That sounds like a horrible idea. I don't think anybody in our industry is going to say that, but it's how well you can execute it. Like, a good idea is only a good idea unless we can actually develop a process around it that we can actually go and execute on this. But I'm with you so much on this. There's like this kind of like tight knot in my chest right now because I'll tell you just a little something personal. I just went and bought a new truck, and yes, I've been in the industry for a long time. It would have been easy for me just to call up, Bill or Susan and just say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Can you send one to the house? But I actually force myself every single time I do this, every few years or so, I force myself through the actual customer journey. Wow, Jess, I'm going to tell you. Wow. Boy, was there some doozies, and to what you were talking about, your thesis, right? Of just like this like start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. Like, it was horrible. Like, I mean, I felt like I was talking to the cable company all over again, where like, I go online and I'm telling them like what I'm looking for and kind of my budget and everything like that. And they're like, great. And they're like, okay. And then I get transferred to another person. And then I'm telling them again the entire story all over again. And then I get to the dealership. They're like, yeah, sorry, what's the stock number you're looking for? What was it? Who are you? What's your last name? Who are you looking for? Like, it's just like, it was just not linear, and just and so I'm with you 100% on this. For some context, because again, a good idea is only as good as how well we can create the process and execute it. Can you tell me a little bit about like Central Maine Motor Auto Group and just kind of how you guys are structured? Because to, I think, execute on what you just said does require a certain type of structure. How are you guys structured at the dealership? Like, if someone inquires in, where does it go first, and then how does that kind of get handed over? I'm just curious.
Sure. So if it's an internet inquiry, what happens? It comes through the BDC.
Hmm.
The BDC is responsible for the first initial response, and they answer the questions that are in the inquiry. Then they look to see, has this person been here before? If they have been there before, then we would pair them up to the salesperson that they worked with previously. If they haven't been here before, BDC will look to see what salesperson's available right now, and will that salesperson be a fit for the conversation that has
Mm,
been ongoing with the customer.
sure.
I have some salespeople that are really good with certain types of sales, like a wholesale to the public, or specific trims they're more advanced on. So we try to think about that when we set the customer up with a salesperson, so that
Like,
they get with the right person the first time, and we don't have to do this backtracking of, oh my god, that was not the right person to put them with, or we're not going to set them up with a salesperson that had, if it's 10 o'clock, we're not going to set the customer up with a salesperson that's got an appointment at 10:30
Mm,
because we want that person to be called right now. We want the process to start right now because the customer's in the process.
yes.
So timing is everything.
Yeah.
So once we've done all that and we've assigned it to the salesperson is supposed to pick up the phone, call the person, go over the inquiry, invite them in for an appointment to test drive the vehicle or put the numbers together, whatever the situation is. And then we, obviously have them come in and then we continue the process, whether it's the test drive or paperwork or whatever the case is. So it's real important that when BDC gets the information, they look at it, they analyze it, they put the notes in, and they give any tips or information that they have from conversation with the customer right over to the salesperson so that the salesperson can have a fluid conversation.
I'm curious because I don't think there's actually any wrong or right answer to what I was going to ask you, but I'm just kind of curious from the BDC perspective because I've seen a few like um, it sounds like the BDC really does like a needs analysis,
Yep.
right? And then really kind of make sure that this is packaged up in this beautiful bow of information and data around, around that, and then kind of present it to. And love, love the fact. I mean, again, just take note, guys. If you're out there watching, listening, is that Jess and in Central Maine Motors Auto Group, they're not using a round robin effect, which, by the way, I think is like the worst thing in the world, right? Like, let me just let my CRM just automatically just round robin into it because I don't know who I might be sending a truck lead to somebody that really doesn't even know that much about heavy duty trucks and trailering. Like, that just seems like a bad experience, right? Like, it's like I love the fact you guys are taking the time to kind of like understand a little bit about the customer, also maybe where they are in their journey and everything from the product to kind of where they are, and then kind of hand them off, kind of like this tower approach, and kind of hand them off to the right person that's going to effectively execute a better experience. I think that's cool as heck. If you're out there watching, listening, you got a BDC. I definitely that. Here's the one I'm curious of. How much does the BDC versus kind of the salesman's responsibility is for kind of building the rapport? Do you have your BDC kind of do that, or you really kind of focus on the needs analysis? I'm just curious.
So we depending on the scenario, depending on how much information we have, actually, if we don't have a phone number and all we have is an email, then history tells me in this organization that those are not the opportunities that we want to send immediately to the sales field.
Got it. So
We,
it stays in your land for a little
yeah,
while until you nurture it, right?
yeah, we want BDC to be responsible for that relationship until we A, get the appointment, or B, get another form of contact.
Hmm.
And then we make the TO. But if we have a phone number and we have an email address, BDC will start the initial conversation, whether it's via chat or email, and then we'll analyze, okay, do we have the vehicle that they're looking for? Were they supplied some options in the chat? And then we'll hand that over. But we really take an opportunity to dissect the lead. Where's this lead coming from? Where are they at? Is it third party? Like, we'll look at the source.
Hmm.
Everything, everything with the customer gives us kind of clues as to what the next step will need to be,
Got little
and
breadcrumbs, right? Yeah.
yeah, and who will be that person that's going to take that next step with the customer.
Look, I mean, look, I like baseball. I don't know if you do. I love baseball, and it's kind of that same analogy, right? It's like you're trying to really kind of analyze, who's coming up to the plate, right? And you're shifting your team around accordingly, kind of based on who's coming up to that plate. I find that incredibly important, and that level of process leads to an efficiency that I don't typically see in dealerships. But when I think of efficiency, one of the products of that efficiency is creating an experience. You know what I mean? I like when I think of like when I we're all consumers. Okay, we all consume something, right? Restaurants, hotels, you name it, right? And it's just like there is something to be said when someone can efficiently get you through a process where it doesn't feel like there were a lot of starts and stops.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that really enhances kind of that customer experience. I'm curious for you guys, kind of like, can you maybe give me some examples where you're like, hey, let me kind of like, hey, we had this customer kind of come in, it kind of stayed in our side of the net for a little while where we did this and this, and then that transfer over, and just kind of what that looked like from a success perspective. Do you have any kind of examples you might be able to share?
Sure. We have customers, obviously, that just supply their email address. And sometimes we get some moms that are looking for maybe a minivan or something that she's got some kids, they're into sports. So we'll massage that opportunity, talk to her, kind of figure out where she goes, how much driving she does, how long she in the car uh,
Mhm.
for a period of time, provide some options, continue to talk to her over the time. And one of the women I can think of that this has happened to, we hand deliver her to the sales floor. The salesperson has everything up front, has the vehicle all dealt with. We've done all that for him. They bring her in with the children.
Love
And
it.
these are really important things because if the kids aren't comfortable, mom's not comfortable.
Hey, no, no, you're right. You're right. I got three little rugrats myself. You're 100% right.
So, and then if we've done a great job, which we certainly try to do, the review at the end of the sale speaks volumes for the salesperson and the organization that we've done the right thing by the person
Mhm.
and given them a great vehicle to take their children out to their sporting events or wherever it is that they need to go. That does happen on a very regular basis in this
Does it?
organization.
That's cool. That's cool. So it sounds like a lot of like I'm gonna call it the shopping portion, right? It sounds like you guys are assisting a lot in kind of that side of it before
Yeah.
you kind of flip it over to the fence,
Mhm.
over to the other side of the fence. I like that.
Mhm.
Um, but that's also a very like different strategy, I would say, than most people out there right now who may be watching and listening in their BDC, right? Because it's usually it's just like, let me just get their first name, last name, email address, and a vehicle of interest. Boom. Now I'm gonna just flip it over to the other side of the fence. You guys take this additional time to kind of help them through the shopping process, maybe solidify a vehicle or two, or maybe three,
Mhm.
before kind of handing that over. I love that, and here's one of the reasons I love that. Like the name of the podcast is Driven Loyalty, and I think back to like what is the core of creating a loyal customer. And when you talk and you really kind of communicate with loyal customers, the one thing I find consistently, and I love identifying patterns. The pattern that I found is that they felt like they were known. You know what I mean? Like they weren't just like another truck inquiry or another truck lead. It's like no, they were known. Just that example you used is so perfect, right? Like, I mean, you can't be felt more known through the shopping process where it's like, okay, like we know you have a few kids. We know they're doing sports. We know what sports they're doing. All right. We know how much time you're going in the car, how much time you're traveling. Maybe lease doesn't make sense. Maybe finance does. Do you know what I mean? Like you've helped and advised on all of this. I mean, now it feels like, what you guys, the transportation solution you're providing to me is matched to me because you help me make me feel known. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I find that's where you get the most loyal customers out there is when they feel known. Have you seen kind of those same results?
Yes, absolutely. But before I even can get to the loyal customer part, I can't do what I do without my loyal staff.
Ooh, good point.
B-
Good point.
BDC is the backbone of everything that happens on the sales floor.
Mm,
Um, I have a very loyal, committed team. We meet every morning and we talk about, do we have any problem areas? Do I need to assess what's going on the sales floor? So I kind of help them solve some of the issues that we might be having in the store with maybe salespeople. But if I don't have those loyal people telling me what's really going on, I can't make some of the decisions as a manager to help solidify this loyal customer experience. So it all does start with the people here in the organization and giving them access to information. Uh,
Yes.
about the process, about the systems that they're going to use. I oftentimes incorporate them on my performance calls if I'm vetting out a new vendor,
Ooh,
because
that's smart.
they're the people that are going to actually use these tools. I'm going to manage it, but I'm not typically going to be the user on a long term. So I value whatever opinion that they bring to the table, because they are going to be the user, and they are going to be the person that is going to be the first point of contact in that customer experience. So I want them to be on point every day. So that's how we start our loyalty process, and it's internal.
No, look, and thank you so much for bringing that up, by the way, because you are so right. Like, you're not going to be able to consistently execute in the creation of a loyal customer unless you have loyal staff behind here, right? Like, I always kind of break it down. If your objective is to create loyal customers, it falls into three buckets: people, process, and technology, right?
Mhm.
And these buckets have to really kind of exist and gel and melt into each other where it feels like it's very coherent, right? And it sounds like you being in the leader position that you are, you've done an amazing job of kind of conducting this orchestra, right? Of kind of your people and your process and the technology that you're using to ultimately kind of get to this. Here's one of the things, and I think I know I'm going to backtrack just a hair, right? Because I'm like, what to me is that pivotal point where all three of these like kind of kick into place, like the people, the process, and the technology and I'm going to say this, it's going to be in the response. And I know you got some thoughts on this, and I want to kind of ask you because like Jess, like I shared earlier. So I went through the whole buying process. Jess, you should see some of the response. Oh, jeez, almighty, oh man, you should have seen some of the responses I got, Jess. I mean, just like I'm gonna tell you more templates than I could ever count. More of like, hey, thank you for your interest. In our vehicle. We'll get back to you whenever the hell it's convenient for us, not when it's convenient for you. But we appreciate it. Thanks for asking us a question, and then never actually reply back at all. But so I'm just kind of I know I'm stepping back a little bit, but how do you really ensure a quality response? Because it's one thing I found that was a big broken part of that journey that I just recently took.
So, how do I ensure quality response? We go through this exercise once a month
Okay.
where I have someone in the BDC go through salespeople's follow up, look at some of the outbound messaging that's going out, and provide me that content. Dissect it, bring it back to me, and I look at it, and then I review with the general managers and the sales managers. This is what is going on your outbound email or your outbound text messages, and this some of these examples do not fit where the customer is in their journey.
Mm,
So we have to be asking ourselves, maybe that's the reason why we didn't sell that car, or we didn't get an appointment, or the
love it.
customer stopped writing back to us. So a big part of what BDC does is inspect what we expect, and go through the word tracks, figure out what's working,
Mhm.
what subject lines are being opened more frequently in the emails, what templates work and don't work, and adjust accordingly. We try to have the salespeople not rely on templates until they're maybe in a little bit more of a longer term process.
I like that.
But on days, 1 through 14, I expect you to have one-to-one communication and keep it brief, keep it informative, and make sure you're doing the outreach, not skipping
Mm.
any parts of the any parts of the process. But yes, we go through and we read the outbound content. Some of the outbound content is fantastic, and we want to repeat that. So I will, give the shout outs to the guys that are doing fantastic, and then I let them know, hey, this really worked for this other salesperson. You might want to give this a try. And we try to uplift the guys that are doing a really good job, and then coach to other guys that could improve on some of their skill sets.
Oh man, that it's like music to my ears. Like, if you're out there watching, listening right now, I mean, look, this is an amazing process, right? Like, how many times do we really check ourselves? You know what I mean? Like, just like honestly look ourselves in the mirror, all right, and say, let me just go check it. Let me assess, right? Let me go back through a handful of conversations, put myself into that customer's shoes, and go, is this how I would have wanted, right? That kind of conversation to play out, right? I mean, the fact that you guys are doing that is absolutely phenomenal because I imagine, and you mentioned it yourself, the findings, the learnings, all right, the is got to be huge from an operations perspective
Mm-hmm.
because it's one thing to say that we're committed to making loyal customers. It's another thing to consistently execute on that,
Mm-hmm.
and this kind of creates this kind of closed loop of like we're always going to consistently get better in our communication and our engagement so that these customers can feel known and ultimately turn into a loyal customer, not just retain them, but actually a loyal one that's going to bring you back referrals, and that's going to drive past two dealerships to come to yours. Like that is cool. And you mentioned it, and I want to go a little bit farther down this because we really do have to assess. I find this for maybe a lot of people out there. What do we exactly assess, right? And we talked a little bit before we started recording about inspecting the data,
Mm-hmm.
and expecting that data to ensure that we have the right people and that we have the right process and that we have the right technology in place to get this done. What's kind of your approach? Like, what data are you looking at to kind of make sure that all three of these things are gelling correctly with each other?
So initially, I look to see the salespeople's follow up initially. I look, what does their day look like? How many customers are they contacting per day? And what did they say to those people? So I look at that first. Some just basic level things. Then I'll start to look at, okay, are these emails getting responded to by the customer? So maybe we need to change up what our word track is. Then I'll start looking at how many appointments have we received
Mm.
off of this lead style, and then how many of those people showed up, how many of those turned into a sale, how many of those only turned into the customer need to go home and think about it. uh, and then I start looking at the closing rates and how much uh, how much money did we make on the deal, so I can kind of figure out, like, was that investment a good investment for that particular lead source. So I'll follow it all the way from A to Z with any kind of data I can get my hands on. Um,
Mm.
I
So,
have,
would it be safe to say that one of the first sets of data you're looking at is to see how meaningful the conversation was, or how well it was engaged in? Is that one of the?
yes,
I like it. I
yeah,
like
yep. I look at everything. It's right down to the timing of
it.
when was the customer responded to versus when the customer sent in their question, just to make sure we are on time, and that the customer is not waiting around. And I think as when salespeople, they don't like to wait around, and we don't want our customers to have to wait around. So we want to give them a good, timely experience. But I look at data from the CRM. I
Mhm.
look at all of the dashboards in any of our vendor partners that we are working with, in whatever objective I'm on at the moment. That's where I'll spend my time investigating the information.
Well, and I'm glad that you kind of brought up kind of the vendor partners, right?
Mhm.
Because I think to fully kind of execute this this commitment, I guess, this mission statement that you're like, hey, I got a mission. I'm going, we're gonna execute, our engagement and our conversation and our handoff to make this so linear and make it so just it feels so good to actually go through the process, right? That ultimately we're going to create loyal customers out of it. But you really do kind of need some additional requirements, right? Like, I mean, I was kind of breaking it down earlier by like you have your people, you have your process, you have your technology, and you're inspecting the data to kind of check on all three of these, right? To kind of see if they're all kind of working with each other. And if there is a breakdown, is it a breakdown? Is it my process? Is it my people? Or is it the technology? Do I need to push back on the technology that you're using? When and I know I know we're towards our end of our conversation, but I'm just kind of curious from a technology perspective, right? What are you looking for in a vendor partner to come help kind of join along with you to execute what I think this is an amazing mission of ultimately making loyal customers. What do you look for in a vendor partner?
So I want a vendor partner to be as hands on in the relationship as I am.
Mm,
I want that person or persons to meet with me on a regular basis, be timely with answering my questions. I typically like to have a dashboard that's going to show me how how many, let's say Podium, for example, because I
mm,
use them for chat and for reviews. How many chats did we take today? How many reviews did we get? What was the outcome? What's the review score? Just making sure everything's dialed in. I want the vendor partners to make my job easier, more efficient, so that I can do more with these technologies. So I want the partnership to create some efficiency for me, uh,
mhm.
and my teams. And
Well,
so,
and that's necessary. I mean, really, when you kind of think about it, like that's what you need as a partner, right?
mhm,
It's like you guys have set out. By the way, I love your goal. Like I am so in love with it. I wish you guys were closer to me. I probably would have bought a truck from you. I can almost guarantee it would have happened. Because you guys have just made this monster commitment, to engaging and meeting the customers in the journey and where they want to be met,
mhm,
and you've had to develop out your people and you've had to create unique processes and you've also had to understand that these are ebb and flows,
mhm,
right? Like, I love the fact that you're like, I'm always inspecting, all right, and modifying either a people or a process or a technology to just continue to get better at it. I mean, just look, it's one thing to execute. It's one thing to say, like, no, every day we wake up to it with the objective just to push a little bit farther. Let's get a little bit better. Let's get a little bit better, right? Oh man, I know I could easily record another 30 plus minutes with you because I am just so I'm in awe. I'm in awe, Jess. Like I love what you guys are doing there in the commitment you're making, and just I could just dive into another 30 minutes just talking about your people because I'm so curious about your people now. But like I know we're getting towards the end of it, but before I let you go, for everybody out there, kind of watching and listening right now, who would maybe like to continue maybe some parts of this conversation because I still think there's a lot to kind of like unpack here, right? What's the best way to connect with you, Jess?
So anybody can connect with me at my cell phone number, and that's 207-314-2417. I'm also on LinkedIn, or you could reach me via email. It's jmcquillan@cmautogroup.net.
Jess, and the fact that you're willing to just kind of put it out there, again, it just says so much. I mean, we both started in the business at the same time, and I think you're a total automotive rock star, and your commitment to your people and your process and your technology is I'm in awe. So thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been an absolute blast. Hey, for everybody out there watching and listening right now, the best compliment you can give myself or Jess is share the show. It means so much to us. If you got a friend or a colleague or a manager that needs to listen to some portion of today's conversation because it can help them in efficiencies or timing or quality response or even just understanding how to build better processes, share the show. It means a lot to us. Jess, again, thank you so much for your time. This has been an absolute blast. I'm sure we'll be doing it again soon. Thank you for everyone. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Driven Loyalty Podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. Happy podcasting.